Hello, everyone. My name is Minko Gechev. I am the product lead for Angular at Google, where I'm pretty much responsible for figuring out what developers need to be successful with Angular and prioritizing it into a product roadmap. Also working on some interesting convergence features with our internal framework quiz. Today, I'll be talking about Angular version 20 and where are we going to be taking the framework in 2026. But since I have been so much focused on improving Angular over time, I was thinking, why don't I model the process of improving Angular as a JavaScript function? And here is what I came up with. A recursive, asynchronous function where we're taking the current state of the world and figuring out requirements from developers and composing them into two categories: improvements that people want to see in performance and developer experience, improving Angular, and recursively invoking this function again. And that's pretty much on a high level how I was envisioning it. Well, the journey with Angular started for me back about 12 years ago from this very email. I was writing a lot of code on GitHub, also writing blog posts about computer science and JavaScript, and an entrepreneur from Silicon Valley reached out to me asking me if I would like to help them build their web applications. Their web app was pretty ambitious for back in 2013, and I wanted to use the framework. My options were AngularJS, Ember, and Backbone. I wanted to use something with batteries included, something that was going to allow me to write testable code, something that clicks for me, that allows me to use best software development practices. So that's why I picked AngularJS. I built their web application from my college dorm, from this very laptop, with drinking a lot of coffee and tea from my Linux mug, and I shipped the app in about 2 months or so, just in time so I can go through my finals in college. And in the meantime, I also collected all the best practices that I discovered while building the app into the first AngularJS style guide, which was probably my first kind of more prominent contribution to the Angular community. That was back in 2013. Now we're in 2025, and well, AngularJS evolved into what Angular is today. Most of this happened through these incremental or recursive improvements. Today we're at Angular version 20, and I wanted to give you a little bit of insights on how are we developing features, like these major features, as part of every release. First, we're collecting a lot of feedback and prototyping a feature as experimental. Right after that, usually we iterate on more feedback about this particular feature and we graduate it to developer preview. We're very confident that that's the path that we'd like to take forward, but at this point, we're not ready to commit to following semantic versioning just yet. We'd like to enable quick iteration on the feature so that we can evolve it faster and eventually graduate it to stable. As part of version 20, we spent a lot of time polishing features from developer preview to stable so that we can improve their developer experience in a way that makes developers successful with Angular. Some of my personal highlights from this release are around signals, debugging experience and profiling, and developer experience. Let me start with signals. We shipped effect, linked signal, and toString as stable as part of this release. You can now use them in your production applications. We also made some improvements in signals and asynchronous data management by working on this resource pattern. The resource pattern is also an API. So here, for example, we have a user ID that is a signal, and we have a resource function call. The resource function here has parameters, which are signals. So whenever any of these parameters changes, we're going to call our loader function. And our loader function is going to accept these parameters and perform an asynchronous action by returning a signal that expulses the value out of it. Since we know that it is very common for web developers to send HTTP requests over a network, we developed a special kind of resource called HTTP resource. With HTTP resource, you have a very similar API that is also experimental. First, you have a parameter, in this case, the user ID, and you call resource by passing a callback. Inside of this callback, you use the signal so that we can create something like an effect. And whenever the value of the signal changes, we're going to send a new request over the network. This API is also experimental, so make sure you give it a try, provide your feedback. We'll like to eventually graduate it to stable in the next few versions. What I love about this API is that it has different flags that let you know what is the current state of the request. This allows you to create a very explicit, very obvious data flow. For example, here when the user resource is still loading, we'd like to show a loading spinner. Alternatively, we'd like to show the user profile with the current value of the resource. Let me spend a couple of minutes now talking about server-side rendering, because there were some major features that we shipped over the past couple of years that now we polished and we graduated to stable. In particular, route level render modes, which allows you to configure which pages or which routes in your application you'd like to enable as server-side rendered, statically side generated, or pre-rendered, or client-side rendered. And also incremental hydration, which is incredible when you're building performance-sensitive applications. Whenever you would like to delay the JavaScript for your app so you can speed up core web vital metrics, such as largest contentful paint and interaction to next paint. Now, testing. So we spent some time looking at different testing options. A couple of years ago, we shipped experimental jest support as part of Angular. And since then, we've been hearing a lot of requests about v-test, which kind of seems like a really good fit since we're already using Vite as part of our development server. Now, as part of version 20, we shipped experimental v-test support that has also browser testing and watch mode. We haven't decided on what feature, what testing library or test runner we're going to ship the Angular CLI by default yet. Our options are web test runner, v-test, and jest. So please let us know. Let us try out these tools. Let us know what your preference is and be part of the decisions that we make to move forward. Next is developer experience. So in the developer experience space, I'll say the major feature that we shipped is this integration between Angular and Chrome DevTools. We work closely with the Chrome DevTools team to develop this custom track in the performance timeline that allows you to explore Angular-specific calls as part of the lifecycle of your application. Let me show you how this works in practice. So here I have an Angular app. I'll call ng.enable profiling in the console. And now I can go to the performance panel. I can start recording and navigate in my application a couple of times. All right, now I can stop recording and scroll down performance timeline, finding the Angular specific track that shows Angular specific events that happen during this application lifespan. So here we have, for example, change detection in the app component, which called the change detection in the home component, product item component, and so on and so forth. We can see the product image template update section got invoked as well. Now, this may remind you a little bit of the performance profiling that we have in Angular DevTools. And it truly is very much the same feature, but it has a couple of additional improvements. For example, it can capture the initial render of a component and also puts everything together really neatly into the context of Chrome DevTools itself. So you can connect individual calls in the flame chart to Angular specific events. It's really convenient. Another feature that we shipped as part of Angular version 20 is support for deferrable views. Now, look at this defer block right here. It has a loading placeholder. When I expand the chat, you can see that we changed the loading placeholder to render chat wrapper and chat components, which allows you to explore a subtree within your component tree that is with root this defer block. Pretty neat feature, particularly useful when you have incremental hydration. All right, so with these features moving forward, now I would like to also share some updates about the Angular style guide. As I mentioned originally, I built the AngularJS style guide in 2013, and together with me, there were a couple of other prominent style guides by John Papa and Todd Motto. And for AngularJS, we had 3 different styles for building Angular applications, which was cool. We had options, but also not too unified, so different projects still look very different. The Angular team gathered us together in 2016 to develop one official Angular style guide, and since then we haven't touched it pretty much until earlier this year, when we on the Angular team decided to kick off another effort, in this case spearheaded by Jeremy, to revisit the style guides and the best practices after now almost a decade of building Angular applications. And we also invited the community by running an RFC. You can think about these changes also as a recursive function in a way. See, we have creation of the style guide, after that recursively improving it, calling the improve function again and again. The changes that we did are mostly around simplification and update of some obsolete practices. Probably the more controversial change that I would like to discuss briefly is the optional suffixes. Now, historically in Angular, we have been recommending these suffixes for all of your abstractions. User component, user directive, or so on and so forth. Sounds cool because you can easily navigate in your text editor or IDE, but at the same time, it's suboptimal because it makes you lazy, doesn't let you come up with a very intentional name. Instead of recommending these practices with the suffixes now, we are making them optional and just not recommending them by default so that you can come up with a more explicit name that better reflects the purpose of this abstraction that you're naming. For folks who would like to preserve these suffixes, there is schematic where you can add them explicitly so that you can get the fancy icons in your file explorer within your IDE. Now, the other recommendation that we changed as part of the Angular style guide is update of obsolete best practices, in particular host bindings and host listeners. Instead of using the traditional ones with decorator, we are now recommending you to use host bindings within the directive metadata. We just consider them to be more flexible and more expressive. Additionally, they are all at the beginning of your components, which makes it significantly more discoverable. To improve the developer experience for them, we iterated over the language service support for their expressions. So now there is explicit type checking and text editor support, such as autocomplete and syntax highlighting. The last change that I wanted to highlight as part of version 20 is the graduation of zoneless to developer preview. We spent a lot of time on this project because it touches a lot of the internals in your components and your application management overall. And enabling zoneless, moving it from experimental to developer preview, is the main step forward. Now you have proper global error handling and proper server-side rendering without any use of Zone.js. As the next step, we're planning to graduate it to stable in the next couple of releases, so stay tuned. I would like to spend the next couple of minutes talking about Angular in 2026. And I believe it's fair to start with AI. GenAI has been a great way for you to make your applications more engaging and more personalized for your users, and also speed up your development process. So that's exactly the focus that we will be having next year and the remaining of 2025. We would like to establish a set of best practices on how you can add GenAI to your applications and work with tooling authors on making sure that they provide relevant and modern Angular syntax generation. You can already head out to angular.dev/AI to find some common patterns for adding GenAI to your apps with Jenkit and Vertex AI. On the code generation side, we already kicked off efforts with llms.txt to inform LLMs on what is the latest syntax that they should be generating for your Angular applications. Next, animations. Well, we developed the Angular animations package way before CSS had the superpowers it has today. With the revamp of the Angular's animation story, we want to focus on enabling higher flexibility, simplicity, and modernization. We'll be moving from the current animations functionality to a significantly simplified version, which allows you to animate your components, directives, and elements with the in and out abstractions, where you can specify individual classes or even an animation function that allows you to plug in your favorite animation library. Now, I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about selectorless, because this is one of the kind of very powerful projects that are going to bring a lot of benefits for Angular that might not be immediately obvious. Now, at first, when you look at selectorless, well, you will move this code to this code. Doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Pretty much we're removing some of the indirection because you're importing your map button and tooltip only once. So instead of importing it in your JavaScript or TypeScript module, you're importing it in your component here. And in selectors, you don't have to do that. But this comes in with extra benefits. When we remove selector matching, we'll make your applications run faster, since you don't have to perform this selector matching at runtime. Additionally, we don't have to ship the code that does this selector matching, so Angular will become smaller. And my favorite improvement is that we'll be able to compile these individual components separately, independently. So we have proper locality that is going to allow us to speed up your build significantly. We'll be evolving selectorless further this year, and we're aiming to publish an RFC as part of Angular version 21. So stay tuned and make sure you follow us on social media so you can get this update and share your thoughts about selectorless. Talking about authoring experience, we have been exploring Angular of the future, how we can incrementally, recursively improve Angular in a way that would make you even more productive with it. So these are just some very early explorations. Remember, this is nothing that we're actively working on right now, but just want to give you early heads up that we're really thinking about it. We have been playing with different ideas, such as function components, single file components, or class components with more enhanced syntax. Just keep in mind that this is really nothing happening just yet, but this is a space that we are really interested in. If you have any thoughts about it, let us know on social media. Let us know what your experiments are. Let us know what you have found yourself to be most productive with. And from there, we're going to figure out how do the Angular current concepts fit in best in these different formats, and what will be the right ways to move forward. Again, these are just ideas. We don't have anything specific. We'll follow up with an RFC whenever we make progress in that space. And last but not least, Angular version 20 comes in with an official Angular mascot RFC. I've always wanted to have an Angular plushie or like a stuffy or a different keychain with something that symbolizes Angular. And I'm really excited for this to be finally close to happening. Make sure you head out to gao.gle/angular-mascot-rfc to share your favorite mascot there, to pick one of these and tell us how we can evolve it even further so that it can represent our favorite framework. Now, just go on ng updates to Angular version 20. We'll continue evolving the framework following this recursive manner by focusing on performance and developer experience given your current requirements. And even though things don't look that much different, we'll continue recursively polishing them over time. All right. Thank you all, and happy coding. See you. Bye.